I Remember Korea. This book is about veterans, which are people who were in the army but aren't anymore, telling their stories and personal experience about the Korean War throughout 1950 to 1953. This video is going to be talking about just one. Four stories that veterans have gone through. Each story was from a different year. Now let's go through some basic facts. The Korean War began in June 25th, 1950 to July 27th, 1953. Now the Korean War combatants are North and South Korea, USA, China, Soviet Union, India, Turkey, the UK, Iran, France, Australia, Philippines, Italy, Thailand, Canada, and a few other countries that took part in the war. Alright, so the first story that I'm going to be reading is called Caught in a Typhoon by George J. Dawson, and it is on page 5, so let's get into this. I was ordered to report to a Navy base in California where I joined the crew of a ship that was an attack cargo vessel designed to carry troops, vehicles, equipment, and supplies into the war zone. It made many trips to Japan and Korea. During the year, I was a member of the crew. The large ship carried several smaller landing boats that could be filled with men or material, lowered over the side of the taken ashore to support an invasion or some other combat operation. My rating was a radioman first class, and my job was to send and receive messages by Morse code. Serving on a Navy ship is not like going for a vacation on a cruise ship. While I was on ship, I experienced one of the most frightening events of my life. We were sailing in very bad weather. The sea was very rough and the ship was rocking and rolling violently. It was almost impossible to sleep. We had to strap ourselves in our bunks, which we called racks, to keep from falling out. It became dangerous to go out on a deck, and ropes were attached from the bow, which was the front, to the stern back of the ship, so that anyone who had to be on deck would have something to hold on to. The cooks could no longer prepare regular hot meals because of the violent rolling and pitching of the ship, so we ate sandwiches of cold meat. We could not have coffee because our mugs would slide off the tables. It was very hard for me to do my job in the radio room. The typewriters that we used for copying Morse code messages were bolted to steel tables, but the ship was shaking and rocking so violently that some of the typewriters actually broke loose. Chairs had to be tied down to keep from sliding all over the room. The weather became worse, and we found ourselves in a typhoon. The waves were as high as the vessels itself, and water was breaking over the bow of the ship. Things that had been tied down on the deck, such as tanks, broke loose and were sliding around, making terrible noise and damaging anything they hit. At one point, the main antenna broke loose. We could not send or receive messages without that antenna. As the leading radio man, I was the person to do something about it. I knew that it would be a very dangerous task, but I felt I could not order anyone else to take on the job of trying to secure the antenna. I would have to try and do it myself. I would have to climb up the mast, grab the antenna, and I was whipping around in the wind, and secure the mast again. I soon realized that this was not possible. Anyone trying to do this would have been killed or at least seriously injured. I went from the center of the ship over to the side where there was a railing. Holding on the railing, I looked at the ocean. It seemed that the ship was standing still, but the ocean was rising up towards us. Actually, the ship was leaning more and more to the port left side. I was sure that we were about to capsize. First, I thought of my wife back in New York. I thought she would have be a widow and might never know what happened to her husband. My second thought was that I was alone on the upper part of the ship, and I wished I could be down below with my shipmates. If I am going to die, I thought, I would like it to be with my friends. The ship remained in that dangerous position only for a few seconds, but they seemed like an eternity. And then very slowly the vessel began to turn upward again, and the ocean seemed to be receding from us. I breathed a sigh of relief and scurried down the ladder to the pilot house of the ship. The men there were pale and were holding on to anything that would keep them from falling. One of them looked at me and pointed to a device that shows how far the ship is leaning. He said that if the ship had gone only 1 degree further to the left, that we would have been capsized, and we would probably all would have died. We survived this great storm, but the ship was badly damaged and eventually had to spend 2 weeks in port for repairs. Many sailors suffered bruises and other minor injuries during the voyage. One man's condition was serious enough to require the service of a doctor, but we had no doctor on board. Once the bad weather was over, we secured our antenna and sent a radio message to a larger ship that was within a few hours sailing distance from us. That ship agreed to meet us and take the sick man aboard. When the ship came within half of a mile of us, the sick man was strapped in a stretcher and placed into a small boat with several crew members. The boat was lowered to the ocean and made its way to the other ship, where the stretcher was lifted aboard. All went well until this small boat returned. Ropes were lowered from our ship and attached to the bow and stern of it. The boat was then slowly lifted up closer to the deck of our ship. Just as it was about to reach our deck, some of the ropes broke and the boat swung down. Several of the sailors fell into the ocean. Others managed to hang on to the ropes and climb safely on board. The boat was swinging wildly, and then shattered as it bashed against the side of the ship. It took a great deal of effort to rescue the sailors from the water, but all were safely brought back on board. Thanks for listening to my presentation. I hope you all have enjoyed, and I would love to do something like this again. So yeah, thanks.